Welcome to Habeas Treasurous, where I try to decipher this book, There's Treasure Inside by Jon Collins-Black, in order to find one of the 5 hidden treasures. On today's episode, I'm going to continue my breakdown of the Pokemon box and discuss why I believe the image of the Froakie doesn't look much like a Froakie at all. Let's begin! It makes sense that since this box is called the Pokemon box, that the various Pokemon featured in the chapter are likely an important source of clues. And I would argue that the Froakie is probably the most important Pokemon clue for us to figure out. After all, the Froakie is a starter Pokemon, meaning it's one of the 3 Pokemon that you get to choose from to start the game Pokemon X and Y. So, I think it's also likely that in JCB's adventure, the Froakie may hold the clue of where to start our treasure hunt. Now, if you've ever compared an actual Froakie to the image of the Froakie that appears in the treasure book, you know that they look pretty different. A traditional Froakie is easily identifiable as frog-like, whereas the Froakie pictured in the book looks more like a humanoid lizard with a tail. Now, maybe JCB just changed the look of the Froakie for legal purposes, but I'm not so sure. In fact, I actually think JCB deliberately designed the Froakie to look, get this, like a completely different Pokemon. Here, take a look at this comparison. On the left is a Pokemon called a Machop. Notice the similarities between the Machop and the Froakie image in the treasure book, particularly in the face. It even appears that JCB might have tried to incorporate the 3 fins on the top of the Machop's head into the Froakie image. Now, I know what you must be thinking. Yo, HT, why would JCB make the Froakie look so similar to a Machop? It's a great question. I think it's because JCB wants to use the starter Pokemon feature of the Froakie combined with a unique characteristic only found with the Machop. And that characteristic is the Machop's Pokedex number. Every Pokemon is assigned a specific Pokedex ID number, and it turns out that the Machop's Pokedex number is 66. I think JCB may be using the Machop Froakie mashup to leave us a clue that we should start our treasure hunt somewhere along the famous road trip road, Route 66. After all, this is on theme with the overall story of the road trip he takes with his family when he was 5.5, which, as I pointed out in my last video, is the equivalent of 66 months. But where along Route 66 exactly? Well, the giant teardrop on the Froakie's chest might give us the answer. You may remember from my last video that I showed an ad for Jeep Grand Cherokee that featured Jon Coltrane. I suggested that JCB might be making a Cherokee Indian connection through the ad with the line, "As we drove, we listened to some Jon Coltrane. It seemed appropriate." When you combine the possibility of the Cherokee Indians being a clue with the teardrop on the Froakie's chest, it leads me to wonder if JCB is making a Trail of Tears connection. This is the path the Cherokees were forced to take when the government relocated them to the Cherokee Nation Reservation in Oklahoma. You can see from this map that there were multiple paths that the Indians were forced to take to Oklahoma. The blue dotted line path is the one that was officially designated as the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail in 2009. And sure enough, the dotted blue line Trail of Tears shares the same path as Route 66 through southwestern Missouri. Basically, their paths wind together from the St. James-Rolla area over to Springfield. So, I think it's possible that JCB is using the Froakie's face and the teardrop on the Froakie's chest to guide us to the part of Route 66 that overlaps the Trail of Tears. JCB references the Froakie's face in this line of the story. His cute face reminded me of an army of Croakers I had encountered on my trip long ago. Now, the term used for a group of frogs is indeed an army. But, as I pointed out earlier, the Froakie doesn't really look like a frog, so I'm not sure that that's the connection we were supposed to make. And why call out his cute face? Maybe JCB is simply suggesting that the face of the Froakie that's shown in the treasure book is something we should take note of. Maybe this is JCB's way of telling us to be on the lookout for a Pokemon, like the Machop, that has a similar face. But he could have made that same connection without using the adjective cute. This made me wonder if maybe the clue goes a level deeper. In addition to finding the Machop connection, maybe we are also supposed to connect the Froakie to a person with a cute face. He uses the phrase, his cute face, so I'm assuming if we were supposed to find a person, it would be a man or a boy who is considered to have a cute face. And Going off the rest of the line, the cute face should also somehow connect with an army of croakers. Now, croakers is an interesting word. It can mean frogs. It can also mean a singer, and it can also mean doctors. The doctor connection is actually sarcastic because they oversee patients who sometimes die or croak. So an army of croakers could mean an army of the dead, aka zombies. Now, of course, you know where I'm going with this. Which actor with a cute face starred in a movie about a zombie apocalypse and who also has some tie to this specific section of Route 66? Well, that would be none other than Brad Pitt, who starred in the movie World War Z about a zombie apocalypse and who happens to have grown up in Springfield, Missouri, which is one of the places where the Trail of Tears overlaps with Route 66. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this connection might be wrong, but I get tons of clicks whenever I include hot celebrities in my videos. And I actually believe that Springfield does have the potential to be a part of the solve. However, I think the more likely connection JCB is hinting at with the line Army of Croakers is actually Fort Leonard Wood, located just south of Waynesville, Missouri. This is a massive Army training center named after Major General Leonard Wood, who started off his career as a doctor. So an Army base named after a doctor may be a better connection to an army of croakers he had encountered on his trip long ago. After all, it would be really strange for JCB to have remembered meeting Brad Pitt as a 5.5-year-old in the late 1970s. The other reason I think Fort Leonard Wood might be the clue is that just outside of Waynesville is a large rock on the side of the road that's been painted like a frog. Locals call the frog the Waynesville Hill Croaker, or W.H. Croaker for short. So the combination of an army base named after a doctor next to a town with the celebrated croaker seems more likely than Brad Pitt, who I only bring up now in an effort to get more video clicks. But let's return to Springfield for a moment. I still think it has the potential to be a key part of the solve. Here's what I mean. In addition to being called the birthplace of Route 66, it's also referred to as the Queen City of the Ozarks. So driving through Springfield would satisfy the line, make our trek back past the Ozarks, that JCB used when describing his road trip route. Also, Springfield is the county seat of Greene County, which could be why the Greninja, or Green Ninja, knew every corner of the area. Earlier, I made a video where I pointed out that Lisa Simpson from the TV show The Simpsons is arguably the most famous person ever to play the baritone saxophone. And the line, "It was then that I heard the silky tones of a baritone saxophone spilling out into the air," is eerily reminiscent of this scene from the opening credits of the TV show. In fact, in that video, I also point out that nearly all of the scenes from the opening of The Simpsons can be created from lines in the New Orleans part of the Pokemon box story. And it's worth mentioning that the Simpsons live in the town of Springfield, and the opening credits of the TV show depict the various Simpsons characters traveling through the town. Okay, what else? Well, when you look up famous people from Greene County, Missouri, in addition to Brad Pitt, click, 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 it turns out that the infamous gangster Ma Barker also lived there. She lived in the town of Ash Grove, Missouri, which is a very Pokemon-sounding name since Ash is the name of the main character from the Pokemon animated TV show that JCB mentions in the treasure book. Now, I know what you must be thinking. Yo, HT, isn't there such a thing as an Ash Greninja? Like a special form of Greninja that forms a bond with a human, in this case Ash from the TV show, through something called the bond phenomenon? It's a great point. And I'm impressed with your deep knowledge of the Pokemon canon. You are exactly right. The Ash Greninja is a real thing, and what better place to find it than in Ash Grove, located in Greene County, aka potential home of the Green Ninja. But that's not why I think Ma Barker could be a clue. She is known for being the matriarch of the Barker crime family, aka the infamous Barker gang. She is often depicted in movies as a middle-aged woman holding a Tommy gun, berating her sons for not being evil enough. She's actually the person who Mama Fratelli from the Goonies was modeled after.
Pepperoni? Shh.
Come on, eat my pepperoni then.
Want pepperoni? Huh?
Come on, let's kill each other over the
Put that gun
pepperoni.
away! I said
Come
put
on.
that gun away now!
You always take his side, man, right? You always liked him better than
That's right! But he's been here, the cooler's broken.
Charlie is trying to...
Go check your brother.
Well, it could have been a tremor, Ma.
I'll show you a tremor.
I'm gonna go shake the brother.
You better not have broken those chains again. I'm not going back to the zoo for another session. Just don't upset. Hurry up!
Remember how she's always yelling at her two gangster sons? It's that kind of vibe. So basically, a mob boss whose name could be a proxy for the Mabosstiff JCB sees on his journey to hide the treasure box. The Mabosstiff, according to the internet, is based on the Mastiff dog breed combined with the aesthetics of a mob boss, hence the name Mabosstiff or Mobstiff. The part of this connection that I really like is that when JCB encounters the Mabosstiff, he writes, "It was at that moment that I heard a loud noise. I could have sworn it sounded like a Mabosstiff." I'm wondering if the loud noise he heard that sounded like a dog was Ma Barker's last name. I mean, she is a mob boss whose first name is Ma, like the Mabosstiff, and whose last name is synonymous with a dog barking. And she swears a lot at her kids, which might be why he used the phrase, "I could have sworn." Now, if that's wrong, then just like this guy, I'm not sure that I want to be right. The last thing I want to point out about Springfield is that it's also the home of the famous golfer Payne Stewart, shown here doing his best green ninja pose from the treasure book. If the design of the commemorative coin in the Pokemon box turns out to be a golf flag, then I could see JCB incorporating Payne Stewart as part of the solve. Maybe Payne Stewart is the Greninja who, in what became a stroke of fortune, informed me he knew every corner of the area. After all, the line "in what became a stroke of fortune" could be a golf reference to a golfer like Stewart, who was third on the all-time PGA Tour money list when he tragically died in a plane crash in 1999. Especially since the next line in the story is, "We reversed course," which could apply to a golf course. Anyway, that's all I've got for today's video. I hope you found the Brad Pitt stuff interesting and that it helps you with your hunt.